Hello, everybody. Sawadee krap. So really appreciate the opportunity to be able to present to you, aCommerce as well as Ardent Capital Group, but really to give you more of an overview of, the whole e-commerce market, industry, the trends. For me, just to give you some context, I try not to go too deep. I want to make it fairly, to give you an overview of the landscape. And deep dive into certain ones that are important, certain verticals. But with 50 minutes, I just want to, dive right into it. And if anybody has questions later on, please go ahead and ask. Oh, sorry. So really, answering is this the inflection year in 2015, right? And what were the hurdles and challenges we faced? So just to give everyone some background about myself. I've been in Thailand since 2002, half Thai, half Filipino, been building businesses in Southeast Asia really since 2003, 2004. When I started building, the market was very early, but as you look at the market evolve, it's happening at a much faster pace than ever before. And I want to go into that and show you guys, at that pace. But before I dive into that, I want to just give you an overview of my background, kind of what we've done in the past, what I'm doing currently in aCommerce, and why we think that the trends are going to be the way they are. So about myself. Ardent Capital, we're a venture builder and investor, so we invest in early stage startups, but we also basically build companies from the ground up. I'm actually more of a builder than an investor, and really came up with the model and the idea of aCommerce because of a fundamental need, right, for logistics and infrastructure. We started with wanting to invest into e-commerce, but we saw there was such a big bottleneck, right, that e-commerce will not grow if you don't fix the logistics and infrastructure. And this is really why I stepped out as Ardent Capital and really went full time into aCommerce to build that out. So really, our experience in building companies in Southeast Asia. Here, I want to show you guys, right, like why did we build aCommerce and why did we start Ardent Capital? Really, the entire e-commerce ecosystem is based on this, what we call this stack, right? A lot of people think e-commerce is just a storefront, right? But advertising plays a really big role in it, and so does media, right? Meaning Google and Facebook, those are the big contenders going to be coming down this space. Why is Alibaba buying, going into content, going into media, same thing with Amazon. You got to look at the full stack. Right, so media, marketing, and in e-commerce, and really the companies that we built in the past, starting in roughly 2004, was basically starting in media. We did marketing and advertising, and then we built out e-commerce. And then what we started to realize was there's a bottleneck, right, in e-commerce, and hence this is why we started aCommerce. So just to show you, basically the exit. So we did exit all three companies, right, and for us, we look at, what is the next evolution of the market? The reason why I would say the daily deals picked up so well was because you bought online and you went to a store and picked up your products. There's no delivering and collecting money, right? Until that need started happening, this is really the big bottlenecks in e-commerce to date. So when you see, basically, why we built aCommerce, but also we saw the opportunity from an Ardent Capital perspective to also invest into the ecosystem, right? So as we start to see, plays now happening in Indonesia, manufacturing to consumer, right? Where they're actually manufacturing products using e-commerce as a channel to the consumer, right? We're seeing some really innovative models start to pop out around Southeast Asia. And for Ardent Capital, we want to, use that opportunity to be able to invest to these companies at a very early stage, especially when we see them, in the ecosystem. So Ardent Capital portfolio, as you can see here, the middle part, we look at B2C, B2B, and the fulfillment, right? And these are some of the investments that we've made. across the region. We look at everything from, E27, which is an ecosystem, the media, people that are covering all the startups. We know that we can get a lot of good, great leads from that. Everything from Shopline, an e-commerce storefront, very similar to Shopify. They started in Hong Kong, coming to Southeast Asia. So, any small company that want to do, want an e-commerce platform, just Shopline. Busy in B2B. We think B2B is a massive next wave, right? Which is when you ask, who's covering B2B currently in the market, B2B e-commerce? Not very many companies. And B2B in China or in Korea, they're basically 70 to 80% of the e-commerce market. But in Southeast Asia, no one's doing that. So we see that as an opportunity in B2B. We're launching that. We've launched that already in Indonesia. And then also B2C. So we approach B2C differently with Moxie. We invested in that because we saw that the woman e-commerce, the woman economy was being underserved. Over $900 billion spent in women alone, right? And there's no real e-commerce site tailoring to that specific demographic. And you can see kind of all the other kind of different plays that we do and invest in the region. But more so, for us, I'm actually here to also present to you guys what we're doing in aCommerce and to give you an overview and deep insight on how we see the e-commerce market, more on the aCommerce side than on Arden. So just to give you a quick overview of the aCommerce business, we're in 3 markets. We started in 2013. We're growing like gangbusters. It's great because, we're actually we're the e-commerce enabler. I'll tell you in the next slide, I'll show you what we actually do. We have over 850 staff. We've signed over 167 clients. So, for us, we see that, what we assumed back in 2013, this is really, it's coming to fruition. I can't really disclose the numbers there on the revenues, but for us, it's been a really great year for 2015. We will be able to disclose more next week when we're closing basically our next round of funding. And you will see why that investor invested into us and will really validate our model. Unfortunately, I wish I could disclose it today, but we're still in that signing process. So explaining our services, I just want to show you, when you look at basically what brands and companies need, they need someone to be able to help them figure out e-commerce, site development, payments, marketing, marketplace selling, customer service call center, warehousing, shipping, and delivery. We do the full end-to-end. We have our own delivery fleet as well, right? So, a brand that needs, basically end-to-end, I'll tell you why end-to-end is because when you look at the data stack, it's so important, right? So I'll give you an example, a client like L'Oreal Group, right? So, we can tell L'Oreal that, the banner that they're using, selling online and advertising online, the keyword, right, whitening lotion yields 38% more sales than any other type of banner, just that word keyword, in Thailand and also even in Indonesia. But what does that mean, right? From the media and marketing side, we can show them member signups, first-time buyer, repeat buyer, how many phone orders, 5% phone orders, how many of the phone orders are coming from what market, right? Orders pending, orders delivered, where the sales are coming from, 60% outside of Bangkok versus 40%. And just from a specific keyword, what type of payment are they using, credit card or COD, right? And where their sales are coming from a heat map. That shows you full data on basically why the full data stack is so important for a business to operate, right? Today, you have actually companies offering different ones, right? But not one offers full end-to-end. And that end-to-end is actually incredibly important. So services, then you have technology, and these are the technology platforms that we actually build and we know that is needed. Multi-channel management platform, for example, called Channel Squid. We integrate with all the marketplaces. So it shows you that we get all this data for brands wanting to sell across multiple different platforms. And then we also work with delivery management, multiple 3PLs. But it's not just services and technology, we're also building infrastructure. So we have 7 fulfillment centers, we have 3 customer service centers, marketing and tech offices. It's just a 200 delivery fleet. We actually also have 60 vans, so light, small weight vans. And e-commerce is a bit different, than B2B, because, you want to be closer to the consumer as possible. So some of our warehouses are actually in central Bangkok, like in Rama 3. So, these are our clients, over 140 plus clients, and you can see it's a wave of everything from brands, retailers to marketplaces. So we get a pretty interesting wealth of data, from all the campaigns and clients that we manage. So this is our warehouse, the first one we did in 2013. I just want to show, because when we first started, like any startup, you're going, wow, that's pretty, would I put my products in that warehouse, right? But that's how we started as, obviously as a startup. And, now, the Rama 3 fulfillment center, this is basically on, 11/11. Just shows you how busy and crazy it is. Doing up to even a max of like 10,000 orders in one day. So, you can just see like, the evolution of when we started and where that warehouse is, as well as, obviously, you got to look at the technology that goes also into the warehouse and the fulfillment center, right? So it's so different from a B2B warehouse. B2B warehouse, what you see is, container comes in, forklifts, trucks going to downtown areas, right? In B2C, you see container, you basically QC, storage, picking, packing, delivering last mile, collecting money. So the whole e-commerce supply chain is so different than the current logistics players today, right? And that's really why we had to build this business out. We didn't realize we had to go last mile to do COD, but we even had to do that to actually start to make sure that, well, the guys weren't doing it well, so we had to do that, right, for downtown areas. We don't do nationwide. This is our new Bang Nao warehouse fulfillment center. I'm a bit more cautious now about how much to disclose, so I can't really, show you everything in the inside now. Obviously, as you get bigger, you start to get more competitors potentially trying to snoop around. So, just showing you the outside of that. Halim Fulfillment Center in Indonesia. This is how we started as well. Very similar. We're pretty big in Indonesia. We're about 450 staff there. Very kind of similar layout as well. This is the Halim Fulfillment Center. Matahari Mall, it's basically equivalent to, I would say probably Central Group out here. But Matahari Mall is one of our biggest clients. This is also our warehouse for Matahari Mall, as you can see. And Matahari Mall, interesting, is it's going full marketplace, 95% marketplace versus retail. And the offline and online are not together, right? So they're attacking online completely independently and not making an extension of offline. And I think that's where I think that there's a bigger chance of success for them, because they're looking at the online in a whole new, mindset, right? Yes, they have the Matahari Mall name, but, it's completely ran and operated, and even the shareholding is different. Obviously showing you more now, they're going there, second level, mezzanine, and then it's going to start to build up on the and stack up. As you can see, the inbound, outbound. So all I want to say is, so here, when you look at what we do and build for basically brands, retailers, and marketplaces, and a lot of companies, our investors tell us, we like you guys because you're an e-commerce arms dealer in an arms race. Like, you're providing the fulfillment, the technology, the solutions for brands, right? And yes, we do that, but we're just scratching the surface. I'm listing out here, as you can see, on the e-commerce weapon solution. I mean, when you look at what's available to date in Southeast Asia, what we're bringing to the table, I would say it's only about 15%, right? The market overseas is so much more sophisticated. Like, yes, you have e-commerce storefronts. Who's really doing pure play mobile commerce? Marketing, CRM, site search, content management, multi-channel, omni-channel, personalization. When I go into a website, how does that personalize, right? Sourcing, pricing, merchandising, customer service. You can see there are companies in the US that just focus on one of these things, right? So I see that the e-commerce market is massive opportunity for just solutions providers. Yes, we can offer end-to-end, but there's even, vertical solutions providers as well. And we are just scratching the surface as a group. And I think that there's, this market in this industry is just going to get much bigger. When you just even look at warehouse automation and robotics just for e-commerce, that's already even a massive play, just as that standalone, just for that model. And there are 3 players out there that are already doing that, a lot of them based in India and in China and entering the market, but none local. So just giving you an overview of what Ardent does and aCommerce does. But now I'm gonna try to give you more of a holistic, view of not only the Southeast Asia market, but also, the influences from China, from India. And it's actually very important because the investors that are in there are the ones that are coming out here, right? And the guys that they're backing and funding, so they're very influential with the companies that they back here locally. This slide is going to answer the question, in the beginning is, Asian inflection point, what is the bottlenecks for e-commerce? I mean, I would first like to say that internet mobile penetration, great, it's massive, right? It's at the point now where I would say that we have no excuse why e-commerce won't be successful. Basic regulations are also there. There's not too much protectionism, not yet. We see a little bit of that more and more in Indonesia and other markets. But let's get rid of those two things, right? So investment, VCs, MNCs, incumbents, right? How much is Central really investing into e-commerce? How much is Matahari investing, right? The incumbents. How many VCs are really pumping money into the industry, right? From my point of view, it's not enough, right? I think that, because, the local players, right, they have a lot to lose, right? When you think about when we start e-commerce in Southeast Asia, we're starting with, $10 billion plus companies entering the market. Yesterday, I was just in Indonesia. I saw the first JD, office and warehouse, right? They just set up in Indonesia. You have JD, you have Alibaba, you basically have eBay, you have Amazon mapping it all out now. So the landscape is so different because unlike China or India, you have multi-billion-dollar companies starting in a market that's at 1%, right? And if I was the incumbents, the traditional retailers, I would be damn worried. And it's not, and a lot of people think that it's just these big e-commerce global players. No, there are already two mega sleeping giants that are about to enter the market, and that's Google and Facebook, right? And even that's going to get real scary for a lot of the basically traditional, even the local marketplaces, in the market, right? So I think that the investments, it's going to follow just basically India and China. Number two, talent and entrepreneurs, right? So you see companies like Lazada bringing in entrepreneurs. They can't find some local. They want to hire local, but the local cannot scale fast enough, right? So they're basically importing in. The challenge of finding really talented entrepreneurs, it's a big challenge. I think that's a big hurdle, right? They don't tackle the big problems. They like kind of the consumer internet stuff, the app stuff, right? But there was no one really solving the Web 1.0 models, right? Like in the other markets. So I think that that's a big challenge, and whether or not there's going to be more foreigners coming in as more and more market as our money starts to flood the market, I can see more foreigners coming in than locals building up. I'm a bit of a hybrid. So the sourcing of products as well, like where can you source all the products? The biggest challenge is every marketplace, every retailer is sourcing from China. Right? And what's scary is that JD has 20 million SKUs in China. Once they open up cross-border, right, they're the ones, China's manufacturing hub, right? So they're the ones that source it. If everyone's sourcing from there, and then that market opens up to enter Southeast Asia, it's going to be a bit of a bloodbath, right? And so sourcing product is going to be very key. Some of them try to source it locally, right? But a lot are actually tapping the other markets, right? Like China. So imports versus local, we invested in a company that's manufacturing locally to the end consumer. I think in the 20-year, 30-year game plan, the guys that have the access to the natural resources and the manufacturing capabilities, right, is going to, be able to defend better in a global landscape when e-commerce is basically fully cross-border. Payments, right? COD, right? So, you think about it, COD is 70%. In Indonesia, it's smaller, 40 to 50%. Why is that? Because the COD network out there really sucks, right? If there was a bigger COD if there was real COD network out there, meaning that the 3PLs or the logistics players provided good, COD network, right? That would actually be much higher. And COD is just, is the preferred choice because fundamentally a consumer sees the product, right? And then they pay. Right, so that type of behavior, it's going to, it's almost like the status quo in the market. And so it's not something, oh, let's just wait for credit card to pick up, right? Or let's wait for, mobile wallet or et cetera, all the other payments. I'm not saying that won't pick up, but currently what's holding back e-commerce is the lack of COD. And you see the exact same pattern in basically India and in China. Warehouse readiness, I covered that earlier, B2C, B2B. Totally different type of warehousing and fulfillment. I'll give you an example for flash deals. In our warehouse, we can actually, for Line, one of our clients, 10,000 products in and 10,000 products out in one day, right? So that throughput that you have to have in a fulfillment center is not the same as a typical B2B warehouse, right? So having to engineer and build your entire fulfillment center around that type of supply chain, right, is so different. Last mile delivery, also similar, right? And I'll go into more detail with that. Taxes and customs, you can see Indonesia, there is some protectionism going on. They're trying, it can go either way, but we can see it's actually fairly difficult to actually import products in, and they're now starting to basically block certain things like groceries and certain items that they want more of the local businesses to supply, and then increasing and driving the tax for a lot of the imports. And then online security, C2C, trust. Meaning that, when you look at, how the e-commerce market evolved, C2C was that actually started out, meaning I bought from a person on Facebook, right? And sometimes I got a brick in the mail. Sometimes they didn't even show up and they took my money, my bank transfer money, right? So, so companies are trying to solve that. And I think that that's actually a big issue because a lot of people still have this stigma of online that, it's like they're going to take my credit card, take my money. And that's why when you see B2C why is B2C starting to pick up? Because I would rather buy from a business with warranty, with basically that security and the ability to return than from a direct customer. So, that's just really quickly kind of in an overview of what the bottlenecks are of e-commerce. Obviously you can still see it's very early days. Southeast Asia, there are different, companies that are pegging what the size of the market is, but again, the potential is huge. You can see here with Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia. Indonesia, obviously, from just a theoretical potential, it is a very, very big market. I'm there almost every week. Really because that's just a massive market versus obviously the Thailand market. Thailand market's more mature, the basket size is higher, but not nearly the size of Indonesia. So in only 5 years, look at the internet penetration. You look at the social platforms that are evolving, right? The landscape is moving rapidly, right? And you can see the e-commerce revenue, payment methods. What I find interesting in Southeast Asia is that it's much more innovative because it's starting at a much later stage, right? So e-commerce models, yes, there was some very early stage kind of classified C2C forum auctions. Auctions is like, it's being faded away now. B2C retail, B2B marketplace, and even mobile commerce. And I'll go into kind of more detail with that. Just so payment methods, COD, bank transfer, credit card, e-wallet, e-banking, over the counter like 7-Eleven, right? So there's still a lot of experimental stuff, right? Again, depends who's really going to pull up, but there's not one dominant yet. So when you look at over-the-counter type of services, there's a lot of returns and cancellations of that. Like when you go to 7-Eleven to basically pay, you have to make 2 business decisions. So I buy online, then I go to 7-Eleven to pay. That's actually a lot of cancellations because you have to have 2. So there's pro and cons for a lot of these, but sometimes when you think about having too many payment options, it's not a good experience for the customer. And when you see companies like Lazada and all the big players, right, like COD is like the default option, right? That basically gets them to buy right off the bat. So the Alibaba Asia e-commerce effect, when you see and it's not just Alibaba to Southeast Asia, but it's also even to, the Facebooks and the Googles, right? And they see Alibaba starting to come up the food chain. So, this is where these guys are wanting to come down the food chain as well. E-commerce deal volumes in Asia, it's a bit dated, but when you look at just investors now, when they see India and China and how expensive it is there, right, they don't want to miss out in Southeast Asia But Southeast Asia, there's not nearly the kind of number of deals that are available, good deals, right? So that's very, very challenging, and I think it's an entrepreneur problem and an ecosystem problem. That needs actually time to develop. Whether or not the entrepreneur is going to come into the market, foreigners, to build, we're starting to see a lot of that now. Right, actually, whether you're, Red Mart, you're looking at, Happy Fresh, you're looking at all these different models, it's starting to be driven a lot by entrepreneurs that are coming in from other markets versus local. E-commerce deal share, just to kind of give you an overview of apparel, accessories, marketplace, and, food and grocery, kind of like where basically deals are, into what verticals. They're the largest deal, Korea, Coupang, but the stat to look at here is mobile commerce accounts for 75% of the revenues, and we see that same pattern is going to happen basically in Southeast Asia, meaning mobile is just going to start to dominate. We see those numbers just basically clearly, scaling, right? Grab, you guys already know, you met with, Grab Taxi, Lazada. Why I put Grab Taxi out there is because these companies, these on-demand services, they're going to try to solve the logistics problem as well, right? So, they're going to be a big player in the e-commerce market. I mean, they may not be like that today, but without a doubt, that's, the logistics for e-commerce, and these guys are going to start to grab that market. Closer look at the unicorns. Out of the 130, you look at 30 from Asia. And, I think that that's just going to grow more and more and more because of just the fundamental consumer demand, the healthy, just the healthy growth in all the different markets. The rapid growth of e-commerce in India, I think like Indonesia really follows the India model more than I think any other market. I think that China is a bit of an outlier. There's a lot of learnings you can get from China, but India, the way it's evolving, like it's very, very similar, I think, to more of our markets than anything. And so, if you're going to look at models and how things are evolving, would evolve in Southeast Asia, I would say India is a great benchmark. And you can see basically growth in e-commerce and e-tailing, the infrastructure, the infrastructure demand in India now. I mean, you can see the companies that are just focusing on last mile just for e-commerce, like eCom Express. This company here, we met up with them in India, delivery. I mean, they're killing it, right? They're 4-hour delivery, anywhere in India, 10,000 motorbike fleet, right? Doing COD and really disrupting, the kind of the incumbents. But we see the same challenges actually in Indonesia. I mean, there's not enough warehouse space in Indonesia. Everyone we're talking to is having a warehouse space problem, right? Because, the warehouse space specifically for e-commerce is kind of have to be in the central locations, right? In downtown areas. So, we see that as a big problem. One of our investors, Sinarmas Land is going, okay, if there is this problem, can we start to build the next evolution of, fulfillment centers, right? But some of them, the land is only available outside of Jakarta. So, it's really an interesting problem that not only the infrastructure from the warehousing perspective, but even also the delivery and the last mile. Next game changers, Indonesia, Thailand. I mean, I think a lot of you guys see and know this already. So really, what we start to see that's interesting when you kind of look at the kind of, some of the where the underlying growth is coming from, right? It's also the trade, right? So you can see, one of our clients like DKSH, for example, which is a big distributor, formerly, I think they're Diethelm. These guys are a big B2B player, right? Wanting to move into online and e-commerce. We actually have set up inside of their warehouse an e-commerce B2C zone that's helping all the B2B brands go online, right? And so what we're starting to see is just the volume of trade from the B2B side, yes, going to the B2C, right? But I think that B2B is also going to start to move online very aggressively, right? Because when you look at all the other markets, B2B is a big chunk of that. Of e-commerce. But when you look at the trade routes, you look at Burma opening up, there's a lot of, really interesting when you look at all the retail merchants here in Thailand, some of their stores are being cleared out by Burmese buying, I can't really disclose what products, but Burmese coming to Thailand, buying a lot of products, and then basically going back to Burma and reselling. And then all these guys, all these retailers going, we need to open up a Burmese e-commerce site and basically start to enter that market via e-commerce to be able to support that high demand. They can see these Burmese with Burmese passports buying, basically hundreds and thousands of products here. So that's when you look at kind of where Thailand is, centrally, there's a lot of opportunity to also feed into other markets. Then obviously AEC is going to be, helping with that a bit, but I'm not saying I wouldn't really hold my breath for AEC because there's just a lot of complexities with the markets. With each market. Southeast Asia consumer, just to dive into that quickly, again, when you look at just the population size, internet users, social networks, is mobile phone, especially the mobile penetration, smartphone, huge opportunity, and the reach now, being able to reach up country, so the rural versus like the urban, right? So even in Thailand, we're seeing like 60 to 70% of the orders, right, coming from outside of Bangkok. Right, where they actually don't have the shopping malls and etc. And for some companies to set up a store that's, let's say, $250,000 to set up a physical store versus actually going into e-commerce and being able to open up nationwide, right? It's basically a better bet. And obviously mobile phone is a big, it's going to be driving that. You look at Lazada's basically traffic over time. I mean, this is Rocket investor presentation that's public, but what's amazing is how fast desktop has decreased versus mobile, right? And, when you compare to global, Southeast Asia is, actually kind of leapfrogging the whole PC Web 1.0, right? The problem is the UI and the user interface of companies in mobile here, it's not that great. The experience is not that great yet. And I think that's still a challenge where I think a lot of companies need to invest more into mobile, right? And the user interface, because, compared to all the global partners, it's not that, it's not that great. But even with what it is now, you can just see, right, how dominant mobile is. So smartphone growth, I mean, obviously smartphone prices are so cheap now, but you look at just Southeast Asia and, that smartphone growth, this is fundamentally what's going to drive e-commerce, but as well as just internet models in general. You're going to see the finance industry being, already disrupted, education, logistics, every industry. And I know I'm here talking about e-commerce, but you're going to start to see every industry basically being disrupted because the consumer now has a lot more power and a lot more technology to make smart decisions with a lot of options, not just from local, but also about regional and global, like basically they can buy from regional and global as well. Social media users, 34%, Southeast Asia average, this one I think I find interesting, which is 50% use their mobile while watching TV. So, one of the visions for us in aCommerce is that we feel that, any media with any eyeball, whether it's a billboard, digital billboard, it's internet TV or it's TV, right? We think with the mobile phone, we can basically drive that to commerce, right? So you see specific ads, right, on a physical, and pull out your mobile phone, be able to buy, we deliver basically within 4 hours. Right? And that's how you're going to start to see basically traditional media and even online media being disrupted by e-commerce. Obviously it's young, the internet population, more than 65% are, under 35, and just the amount of time they spend online versus TV is actually much higher. This just kind of shows you, under 20 millennials, Gen X, kind of where it stands and what the browsing versus buying online is. It's really funny because, I'm sure a lot of you guys are thinking the same thing, like, what category am I in, right? Like, and yeah, so I'm Gen X. But yeah, but when you see that, right? But that growth is actually, it's interesting. And, for us in Thailand, it's a bit of an outlier, but basically, we have to, I just pulled this data quickly from internal, and what you see is, the 65% really, this is more of e-commerce conversion rates. It takes them less to make a fast decision to buy, right? Where the younger millennials, in some sense, like they know of all the different options to surf, right? So they want to make the best purchase. But you got to think that our business, because we are, direct to consumer, like a brand site, right? And marketplaces as well. So it's a bit different from, let's just say, a pure marketplace. Top e-commerce sites in Thailand, obviously Lazada's killing it. We love shopping, aggressively trying to get into that space. And it's just the amount of investment Lazada's getting, right? But, this is what it is today. It's really interesting if you go to China and you look at 2003 and, how much market share did Alibaba had. I mean, there were like 4 or 5 bigger players than Alibaba back then, right? So I think that the landscape's still being carved, right? But obviously Lazada has a big lead, and I think that I would say probably 2016 is you're going to start to see all those big players already start to set up and start to invest heavily. Categories unique to online, electronics, fashion, beauty, that's really the top 3, and we see that actually in number 4 is actually home, like homewares and etc. But we see that pretty consistent across all the Southeast Asia market. Spenders, Bangkok versus rural, as you can see how big rural actually is, and then even the payment method. So, but the average order value is much higher in Bangkok, right? So that's where you look deep, but still, I'd say COD is a big chunk of that. Jakarta, similar. We think that when you look at bank transfer. And I'll tell you a bit more about the COD in Indonesia, right? Like you have J&E, you have First Logistics, you have a lot of actually pretty big players there, but the COD coverage is really, really weak. I mean, you collect money, it'll take up to even 2 weeks, right? To actually, be able to reconcile that and be able to pay the merchant, right? So, we as a company using companies like J&E actually have to secure a certain percentage of orders with J&E. We have to almost like pre-buy and pre-book with J&E. That's how high the demand is for local logistics players to cover COD. And the challenges you also have is some of these big companies, they're very old school and they're not scaling the way that they should be scaling for e-commerce. Are they technology enabled? Do their delivery fleet, do they have handsets, right? Like mobile phones. So for our own delivery fleet in Jakarta, for example, we have over 100 plus. These guys, after they deliver, take a picture, digital signature. They have route planning, on Google Maps. We can even track if any one of them sits still for like 15 minutes, like it pungs up red, right? Like, they're sleeping or whatever, right? But the idea is like, how do you track, right? And be able to, okay, we delivered the product, we collected money. And being able to update, whether it's Lazada, it's other marketplaces, that in real time, even within 24 hours. Thailand, pretty sophisticated. You have Carry Express, you have CJ, you have a lot of local little players as well, and you also have, even Thai Post, being pretty active at trying to solve this problem. So the problem that I see more is in Indonesia, in the last mile problem. Even now where the companies are looking even Indonesia because it's a big opportunity. So really the general applications of retailers, you can just, when you look at the different verticals, the generations, the Gen X and etc., that actually applies for every category. Retailers, I think, should focus in all generations, try to get the customer in early now. Why get them early now? Because the cost of doing advertising on Facebook will be like $1, on Facebook or Google, could be $1 today. But like literally a year from now, we've seen the spike like go double, right? So those Facebook and Google are just raking it in, right? Because, the e-commerce war, you're looking at Google, like 300% growth in Indonesia alone, right? They're making a lot of money from, the e-commerce market. But Southeast Asia online shoppers, still very deal focused and still very promotion driven. Direct to consumer. So, this is a big change. I think, why it's evolving the way it is fundamentally the age of the consumer. When you think about it, whether it's price, location, information, right? For retailers, they used to have control, but it's actually completely reversed with technology. What price, what location, you can get it delivered. So there's so much more options that basically a consumer has, right? And that level of power has shifted to the consumer. And this isn't just e-commerce. This will be applied across every single industry, right? Retailers and marketplace, like how do they basically react to brands wanting to go direct, right? And you look at Amazon. Amazon has so much data. They're going, you know what? I'll build Amazon Basics. We'll sell batteries. We'll sell basically HDMI, Amazon Fashion, Amazon Element, selling baby products and etc. Pinzon is selling homewares. You can see all the private label products that they're launching. I mean, obviously you can see you're going to eventually see Lazada and etc. go down this space, right? But it's different from a marketplace strategy, right? So I think that the retailers that are really doing well, like Matahari, for example, the traditional, is they have a lot of white label and private label, and that same strategy is still going to be applied online in the long term. E-commerce creates opportunities for brands, meaning that now for the first time, L'Oreal, HP, Nestle, and our clients, right, rather than the retailers owning all the data, when they go online, they have the direct relationship now with the end customer. And they can upsell everything. They know, I mean, the amount of data we can show the clients, it's kind of overwhelming because it's the first time they're getting this data and they've never actually been B2C, right? So, for example, like L'Oreal doesn't even have a B2C license. We're the merchant of record where, they've never communicated. They don't have a call center talking directly. They're not basically on Facebook communicating with their end customer. We're doing that on behalf of L'Oreal. L'Oreal's goal is, I want to know as much and direct on the consumer as possible. Why is that? 18% of their sales in China come from online now, right? Less than 1% in Southeast Asia, but they see that trend moving. And yes, I'm talking about B2C, B2B. Why are they not managing their merchants as well, right? All the 25,000 hair salons. Why are they buying through, let's just say, distributors using fax machines, right? When they can actually buy direct. So for us, like for example, on our HP, B2C, we're doing HP, B2C, B2B, and B2E to employees. That B2B site where small businesses are buying directly from HP website is actually higher than the B2C, right? So when you look at what e-commerce creates opportunities for brands, right? At first, traditional marketing, that physical store, it was a bit like lopsided. But when you look at digital tools, platforms, obviously funding, analytics, but also being able to deliver the end customer, right? The brands now are actually, are going to be able to have control of that end customer and be able to grow that end customer and have data and even own that data, right? So our entire business model is, for us, is to be able to support basically, whether it's brands, et cetera, to basically, empower them to own that customer directly. And this is just where the entire market is going. Brands are scrambling to move online. When you look at, in Wall Street Journal, this was a few months ago, but, you look at Nestle, Unilever, all the basically consumer goods, they didn't go online fast enough. Like, they lost up to 20% market share with internet-only brands in China launching beauty products online, right? Imagine that, right? That's how bad it was by not moving aggressively online. So you have this basically now global initiative for all these brands going, we want to go online, get on marketplaces, build brand sites. We want to start to go direct. And we see this pattern happening. So key challenges, I think, for retail incumbents, how they look at the market, it's a real big challenge, right? They look at always think about cannibalization. They don't like the discount prices, but they got to play that game and they got to figure out. That's why I'm talking about private label, to actually start to increase those margins. Offline store opening, yes, some of them are expanding still on the physical side, but you're starting to see the kind of same store sales kind of dipping in the markets. And they're now looking at, okay, how do I use e-commerce to drive that? But a lot of them are always thinking profit focused, first. But when you look at companies like Lazada, just aggressively winning market share, and then they will increase the margins later because you see that happening already in China and even in Amazon as they start to increase their margins more and more by doing other various means of not necessarily like private label and also launching other services and products. Matahari Malls while racing 200 and really investing to the market to win. Sorry, just mindful of about, okay. So e-commerce landscape is complex. So I just wanted to show you how complex that is. It is really complex. And there's everything from marketplaces, enablers like us, technology providers. But I think that this just shows opportunity, right? Most of these guys, 90% of these guys are not in Southeast Asia. And there's local plays to be made by building these models out locally. Multi-channel e-commerce explosion, right? When you think about, a lot of people think it's just going to be marketplaces, but when you look at this, right, about where, so Channel Advisor is what we call a multi-channel platform. They sell across basically 1,200 retail channels, including marketplaces. And you can see the growth, cross-border trade, price comparison sites, social media, are what's grabbing the e-commerce opportunity. It's not just marketplaces, right? It's actually a combination of social, mobile only, you know, everyone has a different, basically, they're tackling e-commerce in such a different way. And that's why I was trying to show you that full stack, that when you look at e-commerce, you got to just think internet, right? It's not just, you know, marketplaces and brand stores. Multi-channel marketplaces, so, you know, just trying to show you the landscape here as well in Southeast Asia. So B2C, B2, you know, you notice there's no B2B, right? Yet in the other markets it's massive. Inbound cross-border in e-commerce is like, it's huge globally, but I gotta admit, you know, it's still a headache for us to order something from Amazon and then getting it shipped. But those guys, you know, are gonna solve this problem, right? And they're gonna solve it pretty quick. And we see that already happening, which is the global players already approaching. Can you help us? Can we help them with the last mile? But the last mile, meaning from the borders, right, delivering into Thailand, right? Whether you're talking about a few thousand orders just coming from Amazon alone into Thailand, it's massive. And everyone's going, oh, wow, you know, is that really is that going to be their angle? The order volume outbound, right, local Thai merchants selling to global, right, is 10 times that, right? Imagine that, right? It's like a lot of people think it's just feeding the local consumer, but it's 10 times, I can't go into numbers, but it's massive. And the outbound cross-border, right? This, with a click of a button, you manufacture something in Thailand. These are all the places you can sell globally. Right? This is now the future of global trade, right? Really, really powers the SME. Now the SME used to have a store, right, on Silom or like Sukhumvit, right? Like they used to just have to have a store to compete. Now they can sell globally the same exact, basically, opportunity as Central Group and King Power, right? Like the future. Now, the internet has kind of leveled the playing field for global commerce. I want to sell into Japan, that's Rakuten. I want to sell into China, Alibaba, Flipkart in India. Amazon has 18 markets, so does eBay. I mean, multiple markets, right? And so outbound is going to be massive. The challenge is the local guys don't have their stuff together. Right? The local guys don't know how to basically make sure that they have to deliver, you know, based on Amazon's SLA or their standards. And they need that help. Please, there's a lot of great products locally. How can you help them sell to global, to China, to all the other markets, right? You can see logistics firms, right, the big ones now, building their own e-commerce websites, right? Basically, so in China, right, it's not just SF Express, there's actually 10 others. So in China, if you want to buy milk powder, right, from New Zealand, right, you go now to SF Express's website, right? SingPost is trying to do it with electronics, right? And then Aramax is doing it, you know, basically for, you know, within India and etc. Right? To be able to buy any product globally and we deliver it to you. Imagine that, because they know, they own the freight forwarding, the supply chain. So they're going, why can't we start to go into e-commerce? So it's going to get really very interesting. We don't do that. So we are, you know, we play middleware as an aCommerce, and we're very careful. We do not want to compete with any one of our clients. And so we don't look at it that way. I mean, we don't want to approach that model. Online to offline is massive as well, where I buy online, I pick it up offline, and you can start to see that the decision making for products now, that's why when you look at basically Google search, you know, when you look at Google search and Amazon product search, it's going to be a war, because the decision for you to buy a product, it actually starts in Facebook. Facebook is way further up the brand value chain. Like, so I want to buy a car. Facebook basically hits that like 2 months before I buy a car. Google captures the bottom of that funnel at 2 weeks. But technically, I've already made that decision, right, from Facebook. So everyone's fighting that demand, what we call the demand generation, right? How do you create that demand? And online to offline is going to be massive in this as well, right? So the last 100 meters, pickup lockers. So from Matahari Mall, working with them on being able to pick up in store. This is the kind of stuff that I think Central and all the local incumbents, right, can actually play to their strengths to be able to pick up. For us, we did a partnership with basically ATT, Skybox BTS. So we have basically 8 of these pickup stations, allowing you to go, okay, I buy on Lazada, for example. You can go pick it up here and pay at these counters, right? Or I want to do returns. Returns is a whole nother business model as well, handling returns. Right? But we set up these pickup stations, kiosks, because this is an extension of delivery, right? So you have lockers, which is closer to your home, and this is basically our kiosks. So you're looking at 850 daily foot traffic, right? So people buy, even merchants now that sell on Lazada want to drop their stuff off here as well, right? And I think that this is also going to be picking up. It'll be pretty big as well. But you basically think that delivery to home is not the only option. It's pick up in store. It's picking up at kiosks, pick up at lockers. So there's a lot of what we call shipping solutions. So we look at our platform. We look at multi-shipping management, right? Like that's what we see as the big opportunity in terms of building out the platform for that. Obviously cash, but card swipe on delivery. So it's not just, it's ATM, it's credit card, it's going to be any type of card, but they want it COD. Deliver it first, I'll pay for it, and I'll pay for it in whatever way possible, right? So it's both COD and CCOD. Again, I just want to elaborate, this is more Indonesia. Thailand's probably 20% B2B, but if you look at here, the B2B is basically 10%, right? Where when you look at other markets, and I'll show you, like China, for example, the B2B market is 32 times bigger. It's like 70% market share on B2B, right, versus the B2C space. Obviously, Alibaba, that was their original model before they went B2C, before they went B2B. But our markets evolved so differently. Our markets evolved C2C first, right? And you can see the C2C market, it's actually going to go less. Why? Would I rather buy from you, or would I rather buy from a business with warranty and etc. Right? C2C like Taobao and all these and all the C2C marketplaces, that was actually a lead gen. That's the marketing channel to drive B2B. To drive B2C, right? So when you think of C2C, a lot of people actually do C2C because I'm a consumer, I can sell anything. It's a great way to basically engage with them. Where B2C, right, unless they're buying small products or a lot of products at one time, right, how many times you engage with consumers is so important. That's why the C2C is a great complement to that. Right, and you can see marketplaces now. Why is everyone, you can see in the news, why is everyone going full blitz into the grocery war, right? Because how many times would you go and buy basically groceries versus buying products, right? Like electronics, beauties, and etc. Right? So the amount of frequency that you visit, let's just say a marketplace, if they start to sell groceries, they'll get you on bananas, and then you'll hopefully buy a flat screen TV. Right? And that's really kind of when you start to see, why do these companies do certain kind of lead gen deals? So, but the behavior of businesses, right, online, they're becoming demanding like the consumers. So they go, I'm buying on Rakuten, Lazada, Amazon. I get the order in 2 days. I can pay in COD, right? And I have a massive product selection. They turn out to a business. It's like, why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you providing that service for me? I want to buy, 50,000 laptops. Why can't I search through all your different models? Glasses, carpeting, whatever it is. So you can see why is Amazon, they launched Amazon Supply, then now it becomes Amazon Business with over 4 million plus basically, products, right? But they're tackling an $8 trillion B2B market. Out here in Southeast Asia, no one's doing that. For us, we're doing it more for brands, but I'm talking about from a marketplace perspective, right? But even solving that problem, the logistics of that is going to be a little bit different. That's going to be, again, more trucks, right? More bigger trucks versus lightweight vehicles for B2C, right? So, but who's going to be able to build that? We want to be one of the guys that can do that as well. So, when you look at I find this really quote very, very interesting, but it shows you, I mean, what I mean when I'm talking about the full stack from media, advertising, commerce to logistics, right? It's like, content. They're now looking at how to convert content into basically commerce. Amazon, imagine product search in the US, like 44% they go to Amazon first. Right? But when you talk to the Amazon guys, right, they're like, yeah, we're dominating in the US, but we're worried about Asia. Why? Because the first experience that people have in Southeast Asia in online is Facebook and Google, right? There's no e-commerce, right? No one's going to Lazada as their first product search. They're going via Google first. And that is the opportunity for Google and Facebook to come in, and they're not blind. They see that. They see all the conversions. I mean, when you think of all the marketplaces, 70 to 80% of their ad spend goes to these guys. So they know what's going into the websites, right? They're tagging everything in the internet. So for me, I think these guys are the scariest, actually. You see it already happening, right? Twitter buy buttons, Facebook buy buttons, Line groceries, right? I mean, different mobile companies with all the traffic, they're going all the way down to e-commerce with the buy buttons. Google also now, they're going to be launching the buy buttons inside the search, right? So retailers worry that the buy button, like the Google's doing, they're not only a traffic source now, so the retailers are going, why would people buy from us, right? So instead of, when you see the Nike, right, let's say when you search for Nike Air Max, instead of going to a retailer, it goes to Nike directly, and Google makes money from that directly, right? So you can see the landscape going, how do you defend against that, right? So there's companies that are just going pure app-based, not allowing you to do search even. They're trying to kind of start to silo themselves away from the internet to stay away from Google, right? And so, it's going to be a very interesting 5 years. So even the ad formats now are tailored towards commerce, right? And you can see, right, Google local inventory, like the 5-second ads, you're looking at, the carousel ad to browse multiple items. So they're already mapping out this like march towards commerce, right? Pinterest and etc. For me, I just look at it as e-commerce is, when we were talking to JD in Beijing, right? Really interesting. They had a section in their HQ in Beijing. Like, what is that? And go, oh, that's our MVNO. That's our telco. I'm like, what? The JD is. You're in the telecom business? Like, yeah, so the more minutes you use, the more points you get, and then you can buy basically on JD. Yeah, and we just look at e-commerce as a customer acquisition funnel because we get the credit cards, we get the data, but we're going to sell them all the other services. And I went, whoa, right? Like, that's pretty deep if you think about it, because it is true. Like, e-commerce companies are aggressively moving towards that. And you look at companies like Garena that's in gaming, that now moving towards, e-commerce with Shopee, more C2C, but eventually going to start going further down, right? So all these companies you see, it's going to go down that full stack, right? So media, marketing, e-commerce, logistics. I mean, for us, we want to be that platform, but, it's actually, we're only one segment of that. But it doesn't mean that, we're trying to provide that for brands, but it doesn't mean like, Google and Facebook will have different type of platforms to provide that. I found this really cool. I just want to show you how disruptive this space is, but I would just say, don't look at just this, think about every industry. So you take an e-commerce website like FedEx, right in the middle. You take every single subcategory, the service that FedEx has, right? And there are startups just trying to go after them. Even in our organization, we're 880 deep, but we're running it like startups, basically our products, because we know that if we don't basically become agile and, and be able to, because we will eventually have to compete with these guys, right? The local versions of them. But we're not yet, right? But you have to understand, like, this is where the future is heading to, and how do big corporations, tackle that? Right? I saw a very interesting article, on the lifespan of companies today, right? Versus, like 40 years ago. It used to be 50-year lifespan, right? Now the average lifespan of companies is 15 years. And I went, whoa, that's crazy, right? And that's because innovation's happening so fast. So what's next? Just quickly, themes shaping Southeast Asia in the next 5 years. I think there's going to be a lot of M&A consolidation. The internet companies like Google and Facebook will enter Southeast Asia e-commerce. The digital advertising agencies, they're up in the top in marketing and the branding. And I think brands are going to start to go, hey, how much money did I make from those advertising? Right? What's the conversions? And I think that they're going to have to adapt very, very fast and very quick. Right? Marketplace space, I think, will be overcrowded, but it'll go niche and go vertical, and we're starting to already see that. Very specific ones for specific product categories and et cetera. Cross-border e-commerce, I think, will accelerate. Right? They still need a lot of laws they need to sort out, but I think that's and that's going to be very disruptive for the local incumbents. Foreign companies and entrepreneurs will flood the market. The Uberization of logistics and basically everything else. Right? So marketplaces, Uber, I think just those two models are just going to be disruptive to every industry. Just the marketplace model and Uber model. So mobile commerce, I think, still crippled. Again, as I was explaining earlier with poor UX. Hopefully that picks up. B2B e-commerce will be the new black, and COD will still remain necessary in Southeast Asia. We think that that's still going to be dominant, and it'll even grow more because that's just what, the trust of what the consumer has. Basically, that's it. Wow, that's perfect timing. I have 8 seconds left. Thank you, guys.